I want to slow down and talk about a really fun bit of technology called animation actions. Blender is all about creating containers of data. We see this all over the place in the application. We see containers of geometry data. We see containers of camera data, but we also have containers of animation data. These containers are called actions, and we've been building them, and the computer has been automatically been creating these actions for us for every animation that we've created so far. I want to take a look at what these actions are and understand how we can use them, because they are wonderful ways for us to experiment, audition, try different versions of our movements without having to restart and rebuild the entire thing. Let me show you how the technology works, and then we'll roll it into a practical example in a future video where we really can apply this technology and this theory, if you will, of how these actions really are going to lay it out to make our lives a little bit more easy and a little bit more illustrative of what we're talking about here. I'm going to turn off the collection that has all of our scene elements in there. And in object mode, I'm just going to make sure that my scene collection is enabled. That way, when I add in a simple little cube here, let's make sure I'm in object mode. There we go. I'm going to add in just a simple little cube. There it is. Something for us to play with. We're actually going to have two objects here in a minute. We're going to have a cube and a cylinder. More on that cylinder here in a moment. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create the world's easiest and simple animation. And you'll see once we start creating these animations, the role of these animation actions. So let's do it real fast. I think for this one, what are we going to do? I think maybe we'll just have it rotate. Nothing too hard, nothing too difficult. So let's do this. Let's go into, I just want to make sure I'm in my object data properties, and I'm going to rotate this, just how about along the X? All right, I'm going to make sure my playhead's on frame 1 here. There we go. Things are looking pretty good, and let's just keyframe animation X over 1 second. It's going to rotate 360 degrees. I know, it's amazing. It's the craziest animation you've ever seen. There it is. Maybe it's a little too fast, so we'll spread it out. Maybe over the course of 2 seconds, it rotates 360 degrees. Yeah, I think that's going to do us just fine. So that's the animation. That's the action. What we have created is some data that's being saved in a container. Well, what is that container called? Where is it located? Let me show you specifically. Now, if we look at our dope sheet here, a lot of this action information is kind of hidden from us. It's not really in the surface or in the timeline, but it is there in the background of our entire interface. Let me show you something here. I want to go over into our outliner. And we're going to peel back a layer here, an onion layer of how Blender stores and manages all of this information. So we've been looking at our scene from what's called a view layer. And a view layer is a way of filtering all of this data into a meaningful way. We can customize these view layers. We can have multiple view layers. It's a really neat system once you kind of get into that high end. However, if you really wanted to see all of the data that's in the Blender project file, and I mean everything, check it out. Just change your outliner to view the Blender file, and this is going to show you everything that's in your .blend. And as one might imagine, there's a lot more going on in here than we were led to believe when we're just exclusively looking at the view layer. And if we cruise down here, there's everything from collections to images. Look, we have a couple materials in here. Some of these are default materials that come with every Blender project file. Some are coming from the rig itself. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that's going in here. There's even something called screens. I mean, there's just a lot of information that's in the Blender project file that it's storing in kind of its directory, if you will. However, if we go back to the top here, I'm going to scroll up. We have a section called Actions, and this is where, and these are the actual data containers, and this is where Blender is storing all of this information. And it went ahead and created one for us called Cube Action. I didn't name this. This is the computer taking the object's name and then appending it with the word action. Whenever we create keyframes, even if it's just one keyframe, well, that keyframe needs to be stored somewhere, and it's storing it in this action here. We can go in and we can rename this. Let's just call this rotation. There we go. This is because all it's doing is rotating 360 degrees. So we can make a change to the name. This is where it's stored. It's part of the Blender project file. But what's neat is that we can also access these containers in our timeline. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Now, down in our dope sheet here, I'm at the bottom of the screen. when we start working with our dope sheet, there's actually a number of different forms, if you will, inside of this palette that exposes different elements of our Blender project file. The data sheet, the dope sheet is showing us all of the keyframe datas in time. However, if we were to go into this pull-down menu, check it out. We have something called the action editor, which is going to allow us to see the actions, these data containers, very directly inside the timeline. And I'm going to zoom out just ever so slightly. Pardon the dust. There we go. I'm right about there. There we go. That should do it. Okay. Because check it out. There's some interface here that's really important. Now that we're in the action editor, which really is a different area from the dope sheet, we have the ability to see and manage all of the actions, the animation containers in the timeline itself. Notice that this one is rotation. This is the one that I just changed over in the outliner. There's a direct connection here. Let's change this a little bit. Let's do cube rotation, give it a little bit more of a specific name. If we were to return to our outliner, notice that it's changed up here as well. That's because we're reading the same information in two different areas. Why is this cool? Why is this important? Well, check this out. We can reuse this data. We can save it, and we can apply it to other objects. This animation data is just data. It's just information. It's just keyframe data. It's not necessarily linked to a specific object. Notice that we have collections of meshes and stuff down in here, but all of that is disconnected from the animation information. These are 2 bits of data that the computer is processing and managing individually, and we can apply this animation information to any object we want inside the scene. I mentioned earlier that we're going to be working with a cylinder. Let's go ahead and do it real fast. I'm going to add in a cylinder into the mix here. There we go. And let's just move it right over here. All right. So now what we're going to do, I'm on the cylinder now. I've selected the cylinder. Let's change our outliner back to our view layer, just so it's kind of comfortable and familiar from what we've seen so far. And on this view, or excuse me, on this object, we can apply these actions. In the action editor, what we're going to do is that we're going to load in that animation action that we had before, the cube rotation. It's almost like we're transferring it from the cube to the cylinder. We're not actually transferring it. We're just applying the exact same animation information to the cylinder. Look, there it is. And now, check it out. We didn't have to rekey it. We didn't have to do any additional work. We have the exact same animation information being funneled to 2 different objects within inside the scene. And this makes it an incredibly powerful workflow. One of the things that I like to use animation actions for is to audition different takes, if you will, to have variants of our animation without having to reset and redo the entire thing. I can animate it, have an option, have like take one, if you will, then do another version of it, save it in its own action, and then compare and contrast and see what this looks like. For example, let's do this. Let's maybe we don't want to have, or maybe I go in there and the director says, I like that it spins along the x-axis, but I really want it spinning the other way. Well, that's no problem. Maybe what we can do, instead of deleting all of this cube rotation information, we create a new action. We can have as many of these actions as we want, and we can do that just by clicking on this button right here. What this is going to do is it's going to create a new action. It's going to duplicate the current action, okay? Let's just call this rotate Z. There we go. So we're going to rotate along the Z axis on this one. Now, we didn't delete all that other information. Let's just go into our dope sheet. We didn't delete any of that information, okay? We're saving it in a new action. Let's rotate it along. Let's see, I did X last time. Yeah, we'll do Z. It'll be difficult to see it in. It'll be difficult to see it on a cylinder rotating around the Z. So we'll do it along the Y axis this time. Let's lay down a keyframe. We'll go forward to frame 40. Notice that my cylinder isn't moving. That's because I changed its animation data. There we go. Let's have it rotate 360 degrees. Key that in. There we go. All right, so now we have 2 different animation actions that are available to us. One where it's rotating along the x-axis, and another one where it's rotating along the y-axis. If our director says, you know what, I like the other one better, well, that's okay. Let's give this one a good name, by the way. We didn't give it a good name. Here's rotation Z. Yeah, we forgot to save it, and that was my fault. So when we're making a second one, let's do the rotation Z again correctly. The without I forgot to save it. The little shield there is what we forgot to do. So let's go ahead and fire this in. I'm gonna go into the dope sheet. Yep, just making sure that all that is set. And many apologies, I forgot to hit the save button. The most important part, we got to hit the save button in order for us to save this action. So now with the animation done, rotation Z is going around the other one. Let's return to our action editor, and this time we got to hit the save button, which is the shield icon. The tooltip popover is a little confusing. A lot of folks, they think they see fake user and they go, huh? What? Save this data block. The second line of the tooltip is what's really important. The shield icon is going to save it. It's now part of the animation collection. It's part of our Blender scene file now. If you go back and look at all the animation actions in here, now we have rotation Z, cube rotation, and this is the one that I goofed on a second ago. With this saved, we can swap this data in and out wherever we want. Shoot, we can even go back over here to the cube. I'm in the action editor. Right now, it's using the cube rotation action to define its movement. But what if I wanted to rotate around the other direction? Well, check it out. Now we can just grab rotation Z, and it's rotating the other way, which is very, very cool. So these animation actions allow us to save different takes. They allow us to create data that we can apply to other different objects within inside the scene itself, which is pretty cool. Go to cube rotation, and now it's spinning the opposite direction. It's pretty neat. I like working with these animation actions. It's going to be a very helpful tool for us as we begin to plot and plan how we want our animations to unfold. It allows us to create variations of the same movement so that we can pick and choose, because sometimes we need a little separation from our animations. Having a good night's sleep is going to allow us to get a fresh perspective the next time we open up our animation file. And having all of this information saved in the Blender project file is a huge, huge benefit to our workflow and our creativity.